Armand King, also considered a live experience expert. I'm the COO of Paving Great Futures and co-founder and seed planter of an organization that is changing lives every single day. We are reaching the hard to reach population that most can't and most don't want to. So I come from a place of firsthand experience. I'll get into that and I'm gonna break it down. And I know, I've been around this anti-human sex trafficking movement since 2014 to be exact. I was pulled into this and I'll explain why later. Before this, I had never heard the term human sex trafficking. If you had asked me previous to 2014, did I know what it was? I would have said yes. And I would have said, yeah, that's some foreign stuff. People getting pulled into tankers and kidnapped and brought to America by way of overseas. I would have told you it's just like the movie Taken. That's what I would have told you. If someone would have asked me, were you a trafficker or do you know any traffickers? I would have said, hell no. I was a pimp. My friends were pimps. My homegirls, my sisters, my cousins were into prostitution. They were hoeing. That's what I would have said to you. Two totally different worlds. But the more and more that I got involved and I seen what the word meant and how it was being paired up with the lifestyle I learned at the age of 16 years old. But then you start hearing these things, modern day slavery, you hear that term kicked around a lot. But to me and to my community, modern day slavery had been a term, but we were referring to the prison industrial complex, right? When I heard the term human sex trafficking, like I said, I didn't know what it was. But where did this come from? Like this new awareness push that's been for the past 5 years. A lot of you all in here know this is maybe new to you. Where did this awareness come from? Where did this so-called new epidemic come from? And is it new? And without a shadow of a doubt, I'm telling you right now, human sex trafficking, sexual exploitation is not new to America. It is the foundation of America. Jamie, can you go to the next slide, please? I would be doing an injustice if I sat here and act like most people act, like this human sex trafficking is, oh, this is so new. America, we would never put up with this. No, America is the foundation of this. Let's not forget how this country was started. This was the biggest human sex trafficking and labor trafficking pandemic was the transatlantic slave trade. Not only were people utilized for their bodies for labor, they were taken advantage of. They were raped. They were sold. They were put on display. They were put in zoos. They were put in camps, sex camps, right here in this good old US of A. Slavery may have ended with the Emancipation Proclamation, but do you know how many slave owners did not tell their slaves they were free? Do you know how many slave owners continue to utilize breeding camps to continue to create slaves in this country? They couldn't bring any more over. Slavery didn't end. Okay, so we will not talk about human sex trafficking in institutions, in a society that is acting as if this is brand new and pointing their finger in the direction of what we call urban domestic human sex trafficking. Black men and still black women who still aren't getting the same treatment as their white counterparts when it comes to survivorhood. Okay, so I'm gonna go over these pictures just real quick. There's a guy in the middle. It's a white gentleman. He looks like Snoop Dogg to me. That's Cadillac. Cadillac was kicked out of Spain. He came here as a criminal, like most of the founders of this country were criminals, right? That were kicked out of Europe to come here and establish the new world. We know history. I'm not making this up. Okay, so this guy with the perm down here looks like it's pressed out. Looks like Snoop Dogg. He's Cadillac. I just find a lot of these things very, very non-coincidental. He's the founder of Detroit, which is a known city in America for like a pimp capital. Really, it's one of the maybe 5 top cities that in the pimp culture, subculture, we know as one of those main cities. He's the founder of Cadillac, Cadillac's named after him. Cadillac is the crown jewel car of a pimp. Coincidental? I think not. we'll get into that. One day I'm gonna write a book called The Real History of Human Sex Trafficking, right? And we'll even just, it's so many things you'll find out once you start going down the rabbit hole. The Yankee Doodle song. Yeah, it's a pimp song, but we'll get to, we'll talk about that, why Yankee Doodle stuck a feather in a cap and they called it macaroni. Where'd the word mac come from? What is a macaroni? Do that research on your own. Macaroni wasn't a noodle before it was called a macaroni. What is a macaroni? And look up the Mongol macaronis. Look at the imagery when you look that up. This is not new. This is a learned behavior that is now people impoverished that go this route are being penalized for. Can I get the next slide, please? Okay. So before I even talk about the crack epidemic of the 80s, okay? And I'm bringing you up, and this, believe me, this is in no way, shape, form, or fashion to condone the lifestyle of pimping, the lifestyle of what's urban domestic human sex trafficking, for the record, because I know there's 130 people on here. 5 of them are going to twist my words. 5 of them are going to not understand on purpose. 10 of you on here are going to stick your fingers in your ears. That's okay. Meanwhile, we're going to keep doing the work and saving lives. But anyway, so after we had the biggest shift in what we call pimping and pimping and hoeing, the urban domestic human sex trafficking, the culture's been there. It's been being established, right after slavery, where now the slave master couldn't just go and rape the woman at will, couldn't just go take black women at will. The desire and the thirst for their bodies did not stop suddenly because slavery was now abolished. No, but now Massa had to come and pay. Massa had to exchange something because the people were left impoverished. The people were used to being taken care of. So now it was nothing for a woman to take some money or something from this slave master, from this Caucasian male. Let's just be real. Okay. It was nothing for that to happen. Now you look through the duration of time, we could look back. You've seen country western films. You've seen the saloons and the brothels. You've seen the girl with the bustier and her boobs hanging out that's taking the dude upstairs. The girl on the piano singing. You've seen these things. You've watched Gunsmoke. And I say this story often. One day recently I walked into my house and my mom was watching Gunsmoke. She was raised on the show Gunsmoke. Some of you of age, you know what Gunsmoke is. And there was a lady named Kitty on this show, right, who ran the bar. Kitty had this Christian woman that wanted to revenge her husband's death. And to get the money up to do it, she had to come work for Kitty. So Kitty taught her all the different things and tricks and how to talk to men and how to get them in the room. This was a hoe house, okay? This is part of American culture. You look at the audience that was in that brothel, in that bar, the mayor, the sheriff, the townspeople with money. That's who was there. And I'm just talking about this one show, but you've seen this show in many different forms. And this came from a place. Prostitution was not a bad thing here in this country. It's bad saying now. There's still states in this country now with brothels legal. Come on. It's okay in Nevada, but not in California, right? It's okay in Hawaii and Honolulu right now, but not in Ohio, right? So where are our standards at? Okay. But anyway, so the 70s established that was the most recent time where this urban domestic pimp culture kind of got a face. There were unwritten rules and regulations that were established in the 70s. Okay. The pimp was not looked at in the black community necessarily as a bad guy. How do I know this? I'm only 39 years old. I wasn't there in the 70s. I have aunties, uncles, and dads and moms and stuff that told me that I've been hearing before I knew what a pimp was, hearing my dad, who never was a pimp, but would talk about his brother who was and how they admired him. I would look at blaxploitation films like The Mac, like Goldie, with Goldie, a Superfly, and I would look at the culture that was going on. It don't take a genius to recognize. There was one particular scene in The Mac, the crown jewel movie of the pimp culture, where Goldie, Max Julian, who was an actor, but there's a scene in there where he pulls up in his nice car, gets out in front of the little kids and starts handing them money if they went to school or did what they were supposed to do. Okay, I've seen that scene emulated many times. Snoop Dogg's done it. Many people have done it. It's a factor in our culture, right? but that was symbolic of how that person was looked at. Okay, but and really not because it was a right behavior, but because we've been so used to being under the boot of America, of being impoverished, that any sign of success, any sign of financial come up, you're looked at like you're good. That's why trap music and drug selling is so idolized these days, even more than college or a 9-to-5 that pays well. That's what promoted to us. Okay, so 70s came into also at that time. What we had from the late 60s into the 70s, we had the Black Power movement. We had the US organization. We had the Bloods and Crips then that weren't the Bloods and Crips of today. They were Bloods and Crips that were actually defending their city and their towns against white racist attacks. Later on, it became something else with this thing called the 80s that I call the Black Plague era. This was a time where suddenly these impoverished communities throughout America, simultaneously around 1985, when the world went crazy, now suddenly these poor communities have an influx of drugs and guns. I've watched many documentaries. I'm on Netflix. Believe me, if there was a story out about a black man that went and got cocaine from Colombia and brought it over, or smuggled it across the border and brought it into these communities, we would have seen the documentary by now. We have yet to hear that story about that black man, black woman that owned the plane that was flying it in. So where did the drugs come from? Where did this influx of guns come from suddenly? I have yet to see the documentary about one factory that was owned, gun factory, anything. But yet even today we hear stories about crates of guns and bricks being found in random places in the hood in Chicago. I'm not dumb. I'm not no conspiracy theorist. These are facts, right? So this Black Plague, this crack epidemic destroyed our communities across the board, wiped out families. With that became the turnover of the Bloods and Crips to where now they're fighting over territory because this drug is there. And not just that, let's go back a little bit before, when the 70s, like strategically, our federal government went and murdered or incarcerated all black leadership that they could find. J. Edgar Hoover's own writings go out and find the Black Messiah. His words, okay? Martin Luther King was murdered. Malcolm X was murdered. The Black Panther Party was destroyed, infiltrated, destroyed. So you take away the leadership from our community. You leave kids now with guns, drugs, and no leadership, no elders, no structure that was already in trauma from the beginning. Okay? Crack era. Prison industrial complex. That's when we become the super predators. Late 80s, early 90s, that's when all not blaxploitation films. Now you're watching Colors. You're watching every gang film in the world, right? So we can put an image in our head of what those communities are. So when they come, system, and incarcerate them, criminalize them, the rest of society turns away because we're monsters, right? Next slide, please. Hey, there we go. So you had, like I said, you had the Bloods and the Crips. I'm talking firsthand from my lifetime, right? By 12 years old, Bell Middle School, where I attended, I was a homeless kid. From 12 to 14, going on 15 years old. We're homeless, meaning homeless don't mean you're sleeping under a bridge. And a lot of y'all know this because you deal with these populations. Homeless means I don't have a room, I don't have a door, I don't have a house to say is mine. We're couch surfing. We're living room floor surfing. Everywhere anybody could let us stay for the night, the day, the week. Okay, so I experienced what it's like to be homeless. At that same time, now I'm reaching out to only possible option for me to have some kind of family, structure, love, and that's the gang. So that was my wannabe gangbanger era. And I tried everything in the world to be accepted, to be by the gang. And fortunately, people wonder, why do you go to the gang? Well, shoot, society's rejected us young black men and women our entire life. There's nothing we have to offer the society as far as what they've told us. There's nothing we have of value to give as far as what they've told us. But now the gang is here. And all I have to do to be accepted, wanted, and loved by them is to show heart. I got that. Yeah, I may have to fight or whatever to prove that, but that's cool. I'll do that. At least finally I have something accepting me. At least finally I have some kind of brotherhood. You know, I'm a child of, I have 8 core friends, best friends. Not one of us had a dad in the house. Not one of us. 3 of those 8 dads were dead by the time they were 7 years old. So who was raising us? Okay. I can't remember anything a teacher ever taught me. I've tried, and I'm not just saying this, I'm not all the way anti the school system, but I am. We have some good teachers out there. I commend you. Unfortunately, I wasn't one of those kids that got one of those. I can't remember one thing a teacher taught me. The last time I can remember being educated by this school system was the 6th grade, that I actually learned something from school. But I remember every Snoop Dogg line from 1993. So the real question is, who was our teacher? Who is our teacher? Yeah, okay. Next slide, please. So from my wannabe gangbanger era as a little kid, we went into the mid-90s. I started my high school career at Helix High School. I've been to 4 different high schools around San Diego. At that time, I believe most of the people on here are from San Diego, so I'm going to talk straight San Diego. We don't have to talk nowhere else. We're going to be right here in our own backyard. So in the mid-90s, gangbanging had almost completely slowed down and stopped for young blacks in San Diego. Nobody recognized this as being a key error to come in and help us. Nobody realized that, like my friends, it was a clique era is what I call it. Over 100 different cliques formulated in San Diego. Some of them were branches off of the main gangs. Most were just created entities of friends, male and female. A lot of these cliques were composed of Bloods and Crips and we have 7 main black gang sets in San Diego. A lot of these cliques were a mixture of these. Never before had this been done. What was happening was a mind shift, and I'm 15, 16 years old. My peers are. We don't know what we're doing, but we were talking down on gangbanging, even though we're from there. Although we're not that we're nerds or weak, we're ready to fight too. But we had the opportunity to see our older cousins, our uncles, the people in our neighborhood either die or go to jail behind this gangbanging. We knew that wasn't cool. At the same time, simultaneously, there was a shift in the music. You know, we could do a whole presentation just on the music and the main influence it has over the youth, over people, over the world, really, especially hip hop is what I'm talking about. So there was a shift in music. You know, previous to, I would say 97, it was mostly gangster rap. California gangster rap kind of ruled the airwaves across this country. Then suddenly this shift started happening. You got people like, those that know, you can agree with me, because I call it the bling bling era that came next. Now we got this gentleman named Master P and the No Limit Soldiers, and we seen an influx. And no longer the lowriders cool. No longer are the Dickie suits, gangster apparel cool. Now what's cool is big rims, gold, diamonds. We're not sitting on we used to ride little 16-inch, 15-inch, 17-inch, maybe 17-inch rims. Now we 24s and 26s, and whoever got the most gold, diamonds, and money, it's no longer who's selling the most dope and killing people, which was cool before. So there was a shift in our minds that went to money. Reflecting, I can't say what comes first, the chicken or the egg or the chicken. I don't know if the streets reflect the music or the music reflect the streets. And honestly, nothing against the rappers, because they come from the same misguided communities, fatherless communities we did. Opportunity-less communities we did. So when the shift's happening, now my mind frame's changing. My outfits are changing. I'm putting away my Dickie suits now, my red feelers and my flamed up outfits. It means red all over for those that don't know. I'm putting that away. And I remember my friend that's in this picture you see me squatted down. My friend that's behind me took me shopping for the first time, buying me Nautica, Polo, all these different clothes I never would have worn in my life. And we had this era we called the juicing era. 15 years old, I still didn't know what a pimp was, but we began what we called, and not just my clique, but just male cliques across San Diego, we were juicing girls. To be around us, you had to buy us Jack in the Box. You had to buy our clothes, give us some kind of money. We literally collecting lunch money at school. Kids. Then that day comes around I think I was just about to hit 17 years old, and I came home with my friends, and thank you HBO and talking about media. Thank you for bringing this show called Pimps Up Hoes Down to the air, right? So 4 p.m. I'm looking at men, black men, women, mostly black women that at the time appeared extremely happy. At the time, I'm watching them talking fancy and having gold, and I'm admiring these cats. We're mimicking them. We're taking on their personas, and we're learning. And now we're sparked. Because for the first time in my life, in my head, I seen an option that I could have. You know, I deal with the youth. We're in 2 middle schools right now with programs at Bale that I was at and at Knox Middle School. We're there. Pre-COVID, we're there. We interview the kids before they enter the program. What do you want to be when you grow up? Traditional question. None of them raise their hand and say, I want to be a pimp or a prostitute. Those kids say, I want to be a sports star. I'll say that. Some kind of sports or some kind of entertainment. The crazy thing is, those were the only 2 options I saw for myself as a kid. Now, here we are 30 years later with the same options that the kids are speaking on. Kids that look like me. Nothing much has changed. So it wasn't long before I realized my little 5'7", 135 pound at the time, there's no sports for me. I'm not athletic. I can't rap, sing. So what now? What now? And I know people say these options are out there. We're in the land of opportunity. Yeah. But if you don't recognize those opportunities, if your community around you is not supporting or promoting those opportunities to you, then I'm going to do what my community's showing me. I'm going to do what that box that I was put in is showing me. And you cannot blame me for doing all that I see and I am raised to know. Right? So I think Martin Luther King, I can't quote him exactly, but he said these are derivative crimes. You know, the problem is not the person that tripped in the dark. The problem is the person that turned off the light in the first place. So you got our community out here now. We from juicing now, just getting turned on to this pimping stuff. We tried fast. Like, okay, enough information has been gathered by our 16-year-old non-thinking selves. And my homegirl, who works for Paving Great Futures today, she's the first girl I ever seen on the Blade on El Cajon Boulevard. First girl, known her since 13 years old. White girl, blonde hair, blue eyes, raised in a middle-class neighborhood with 2 parents that loved her to death. Wasn't abused. Wasn't misused. She was overly spoiled. So what brought her into the game? So these factors and things that we think are what pull people in the game, some of them are correct. But you can't just say, okay, my daughter's not gonna because she's okay. No. The streets are attractive as hell, unfortunately. And it will pull your daughter out the suburbs so fast, okay? And the solution is not lock all the black men up, because that ain't gonna fix nothing. We've tried that, all right? So you got a bunch of people who've been flashed the American pie their whole life, like myself, but yet had to settle for the American crumb of that pie. So we emerged into the game. By 17 years old, I was fully active. Right? Me and my friends were there. Saw that girl the first time come back with that money to give to my brother, my best friend. She wasn't mad. She was happy. He was happy. It looked like a good ordeal. So here we go, full steam ahead. All of us going after money. And as we're saying, like I repeat, and not taking away, there's many forms of human sex trafficking, like my sis Jamie said. I'm not talking about all of them. I'm not even an expert at all of them. And those that get in your face and just cover everything and they're an expert, walk away from that meeting. They're lying and coming from stories that aren't validated. I can't speak on those. I would be lying to you. I know this right here, urban pimping and hoeing that come out majority out of black communities. Okay, so when we merged into this life, there was not a girl that was kidnapped. We actually even had the saying, by choice, not force. If you had to physically touch somebody or put them into the game, you were the wackest pimp ever. If you couldn't use your mouth and your mind to talk and to do this, then you were whack, right? So my peers, when we merged into this game, it wasn't just the men. Simultaneously during this period, the girls that went in, they were my homegirls. They were my blood relatives. They were people that I was in school with my whole life. We went in together, and this period of time, pimping and prostitution was the coolest thing we had going. Pimping and hoeing, the best thing going. If you're fucking for free instead of a fee, leave me. You know, it was a way for us to leave poverty. It was a way for us to finally have something of our own. We created our own society away from society because society had never accepted us in the first place. So, like I said, it wasn't now at that young age, your mind, you're not thinking right. You have no conception of life. You don't understand the value of life, not your own or somebody else's. And you damn sure don't recognize the value in this woman. And not because I'm a black pimp from the hood. No, America has taught you since an infant that women values are put on them for money and sex. You can't walk through a grocery store aisle and not look at a People magazine or something my whole life and not see a half-naked woman, not see something sexual. You can't. I picked up my first Playboy magazine at 6 years old. Hugh Hef is idolized by America. Come on. This is not new, and we didn't make this up. So we've already been conditioned, us, to put a value and sex attachment to women. The music continue to put that on us even more, and Hollywood media in general. I'm not making this up. You've been watching and listening to the same stuff I have, right? But during this era, for some reason now, another slight shift in music is coming, and it's just pimping is just being promoted to our hood. Some of y'all on here remember Nelly's song Pimp Juice. Some of y'all on here remember Jay-Z Big Pimpin'. These are two individuals that didn't pimp and were already rich. Why are they putting songs out like this? Why is 50 Cent making a song Pimp? Why? Why is MTV putting out a show called Pimp My Ride? Why are we making the pimp word so easy? Why? Okay. And why? The whole world's dancing to Nelly's Pimp Juice, Platinum. The whole world's dancing to Jay-Z, Big Pimpin', spending G's, Big Pimpin' on BLADs. The whole world's dancing to this. Meanwhile, my hood mind is looking, listening, getting confirmation that it's okay, and watching music videos. You go watch Nelly's Pimp Juice music video. Everybody in his video is a real pimp. Minus Max Julian from the Mac. More confirmation. So I can name 100 other instances that let us know this was okay. Our mothers never sat out. All 8 of my friends that I ran with, not one of our moms sat us down and said this was bad or don't do it. They actually were kind of happy that we weren't gangbanging or selling crack. Remind you, they came up out of the Black Plague. So now to see their sons not selling dope, not shooting stuff up with nice clothes and nice cars and able to help them a little, it was all good. So we were misguided. We manipulated ourselves. We brainwashed ourselves constantly by the words you hear these things, sorry to break up stuff you thought you knew. You know, when they say we brainwashing women, yeah, that brainwashing is happening, but it's happening across the board because the same way that you're told the pimp will isolate the girl so she's not around her family society, facts. But that pimp's also isolating himself. Neither one feels that they're welcome or want to be around those societies. So we get trapped in this funnel. That carrot, we're riding around chasing that carrot. You might have got a little nibble of it. People made a little money, but you continue to chase that carrot without ever reaching it. Now you're 17, 18, 19, 25, 27, 30 years old. You done bumped your head a bunch of times. You done went to jail. Your car's been stolen, all these things. And now you're 30. Your 20s are gone. You know, a lot of us been 20. I hope y'all been 20 before. You thought you knew. You didn't know. Teenage years, you didn't know nothing. 20s, you thought you knew, you didn't know. 30s, when you're like, damn, you kind of got a little bit of life up under your belt now. You're making a little bit better decisions, hopefully. You know, so by 30, a lot of people got out the gate. This is not the biggest of the epidemic at all. What you're facing and what we're dealing with right now is the tail end. Yes, I said it. I work with this population to this day. It is hard to find a young man that's still pimping in comparison to what it was. Yeah, crack is still being sold today, but the crack epidemic is over. Yes, people are still pimping and prostituting today, but the biggest of the epidemic, y'all missed it. I lived in an era where 65, 70% of my peer group was pimping or prostituting. Girls would talk about other girls for not being involved. Men would talk about other men for not being involved. So where's the difference and why is it not happening like that today? Similar to like when we were growing up and we seen the consequences of the gang era. We got to see that. When we came in, merged into this pimp and prostitution era, there was nobody to look up to see, oh, no, that's bad. Oh, I could lose my life, or this can happen. But now I sit here on my arm, I have 4 names right here. That's 4 of my 8 friends. They're all dead. My best friend is dead. Okay? So we had to kind of grow out of this without no real guidance. So the kids nowadays, they had auntie that was a hoe. They had uncle that was a pimp, an exploiter. They had that. They got to watch those things. They got to live under them to see the consequences. So now they got a little bit more like, nope, that might not be for me. Where we didn't have that. So I'm proud that now we can go and talk to these kids and talk to these youth, and we actually point out the pitfalls because we know them, because I lived them. So they don't end up on somebody else's arm or Instagram picture with wings put on their body. Change the slide, please, Jamie. Pathways of trafficking. I just mentioned a bunch. They're right here. You can change the slide, Jamie. I'm running out of time. Okay. Why the game? The game was a need for some difference. Like I said, change of music, the cool factor. And I just went through all this right here. These slides is to remind, but we don't need to remind. Get reminders constantly. You can switch the slide, Jamie. And we're going to talk about this buyer next. Before we even go into the buyer, I want you to know the buyer that existed in the past is the same buyer that's now, okay? And primarily, it's a Caucasian male who can afford to have sex. We want to stop this. Hey, believe me, my peer group from back then, the people now would not be in the business if there was no business. And then you might ask yourself, why aren't we as a society extra targeting the buyer? Because if we did, guess who we'd find? Senator blah blah, county whoop-de-whoop, lawyer, doc, your husband. Okay.
And I just want to add to, which I should have said at the beginning of the presentation, a little bit late now, but this definitely, when you catch, I know myself and I know Armand, just working with him enough, like I know some people are data people, statistic people. You're not going to get statistics when it comes to our presentations, because those are things that you can go and Google easily. You can go and Google those things. On top of that, if you look at where the data from those statistics comes, they're at least 5 years old, if not 10 years